Well, good morning guys, and welcome to my I'm hoping my mic's working. Right, good morning guys, and welcome to my humble abode. It's been a little while since I put the last video out, and there's been a number of reasons for that. One of which is work. Obviously I do have a day job, apart from fishing, and it has been pretty hectic lately, as well as other projects. I've been out in Europe filming for Angling Lines, and doing some other bits and bobs, so I'm back anyway. I was out a few weeks ago doing my first tutorial of the year with a young lad called Paddy Marston and his dad Andy. And he was actually the lad that won the Brothercarp, the first Brothercarp giveaway, which I did at the end of March, I believe it was. So yeah, me and Paddy spoke a little while before we actually went out and got the rods out. We spoke about a few different venues that Paddy wanted to do. And we eventually decided on Furnace Lakes. Now, Furnace Lakes is somewhere that I've not been before. I do know some people who fished it. I know that they've got some very big fish in some of the lakes, including some very large catfish. So the venue was set. We decided to meet in the morning at gates open. I think it was about 7:30, 7 o'clock, something like that. Sweet. Good morning men and women and ladies and children and whatever you are. I'm currently on my way down to Furnace Lakes this morning, coffee in hand, standard procedure, and I'm off to do a fishing tutorial with young Paddy and his dad. We are...
Turn right onto Walpolston Road, then at the roundabout, take the first exit onto Middleton Road.
Okay. We are meeting a... Oh, for God's sake, man, stay where you are! And they arrived shortly before me. So I got down, met Paddy's dad Andy first, who was already eagerly awaiting me in the car park, and we went to the ticket office to get our tickets. Now, we come up against a little bit of an issue. They wouldn't let us walk around the lakes, which was the first one. So you have to choose your swim before you walk around the lake. Now, being on a fishing tutorial, it's not usually the first thing you expect to come across when you arrive at a new venue. You know, the first thing I want to do is have a walk around, see where the fish are, see if there's anything showing, see if there's any fish feeding, etc, etc. But that wasn't the case. We had to choose our swims there and then and make our way down to our pegs. So that being said, that was the first issue we came across. The next being was that because Paddy was 14, he wasn't actually old enough to be able to fish on any of the main lakes. So we had the choice of Furnace Lake, which I believe is the biggest lake on site, and one of the smaller ones. So our hands were kind of tied. So anyways, we ended up on Furnace Lakes. The guys got, Andy and Paddy got their stuff chucked on the back of a quad bike and delivered to their swim. Me on the other hand had everything loaded up on the wheelbarrow. So I wheeled it straight out the van and walked myself around. So being on the Furnace Lake, we were put up in, I think it was swims 20 and 21, and 22 possibly, around there. Top end of the lake anyway. And we kind of set up in a row. I didn't want to get my gear set up too quickly, so I sort of stood with Paddy. We watched the water for a little while and we did see a few fish show. So good signs. There were a few people plotted up towards the lower end of the lake, and there were two guys fishing at the very top end, which was to our left. So yeah, we decided to stick in the swims we were in, and we set about getting the gear out, leading about. Paddy went first. Obviously I wanted to get him his spot sorted as it was his tutorial, so we got a bare lead out, fired it over to the other side, had a little feel around on the bottom. It was pretty uniform, clay bottom, no snags whatsoever, not too many features to go at. So the plan was to fish to the far margin as the main feature. There were a few reed beds and some nice overhanging trees, especially in front of Andy on that side. And so they set about getting their rods out. So I sat with Paddy, we talked about some rigs, about the bait we were going to use, and I showed him how to tie up some slip D rigs and some bits and bobs, which I think he got quite a little bit out of. I gave him a few bits of end tackle to take away with him. And yeah, we set about getting the rods out. So the first part of the morning went past pretty uneventfully really, apart from quite a few slimy bream, which some people like, but we don't. Yeah, so the bream came thick and fast for a little while. And I think Paddy was starting to get a bit concerned about the bream, and I said, don't worry, you know, if the bream are feeding, the carp won't be far behind. And I think in the early hours of the afternoon, it was Paddy's dad who actually had the first run from a carp. Fishing over to that far overhanging tree that I spoke about a little bit earlier. And it was only a small one, but it was a good sign because it was a carp. So we had a few pictures of that little fish, put that one back, and then a little while later, Paddy's rod was off.
Softly, softly. Lovely.
Oh. It was on a little blowback rig with a twister, and it was on a basic cultured hook bait, 18mm. A few freebies over the top. Screwed off.
Kind of flowed. You felt like the fish were moving from the bottom end of the lake, moving up. And as I was fishing at the end, in between Paddy and the two guys fishing to my left, I was kind of expecting a run at some point in the afternoon as the fish moving back up the lake. So that being said, a little while later, Andy's rod was off again. Now, unfortunately, it didn't manage to land that one. It did come off, and he did say it felt like a better fish. So, with two fish in the bag, Andy'd obviously had one and lost one. We were contemplating staying in the swims we were in. There were options to move, but we felt like we were in a pretty good area. So we spent the rest of the afternoon talking amongst ourselves, watching the water. Didn't really see much else, not in the way of movement of carp anyway. And got to about 5-6 o'clock that evening, and we noticed the two guys to the left of us, or to the left of me. I think they were in the very far end swims. And at the far end of Furnace Lake, you've got a really nice, like a whole margin full of reeds. There's a really nice sort of snaggy area in the left, right close in the margin. And you've got a little channel up the far end where there's a little bridge that goes across. Now, everyone knows that reeds are a pretty natural holding area for carp anyway, at any time of the year. So with them moving out, I was umming and ahhing because I hadn't obviously had a run yet, whether to make the decision to move. Now with Paddy in next to me, I think he was getting a bit of cold feet as well, because after not having any more action since the afternoon, he was keen to get onto the fish. I knew it was going to be an area that was going to produce in the morning. Reeds always hold carp, like I said, and especially them sort of areas in the morning are always a winner. So about 9:30, well, it was a little bit earlier than that, it's probably about 8 o'clock. We finally made the choice to move down to that top end. Paddy going into the area that fished out towards a slight bay directly opposite on the far bank, and I chose to go right at the far end along the reed line margin. Long story short, or short story long, however you want to put it, we were finally set up in the swims. It was probably about 9 o'clock, 9:30, just managed to get the rods out before dark. And I was quite hopeful of some action. As soon as we arrived in the swim, there was a lot of fizzing happening, and there was a lot of movement in that area. And it was quite surprising that most of the evening, until we actually finally got into the bed chairs, went past with no action at all. So we went to bed. It had been a long day. Obviously, we've been up since 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. Nothing happened throughout the night. It was a quiet night. I got a good night's sleep, and it was about 5 o'clock, about 5:30 in the morning, that Paddy received his first run.
So I had this one off the reed on the simple blowback rig again with a cultured hook bait 18mm with a little citrus topper 12mm just to top it off with a snowman. Screamed off from the reeds and took me down into my snag on my left hand margin. But yeah, I'm very happy with this one. It's my second fish. Get in there.
Yeah, and it was a sort of mid-double common, I think. I'm actually can't think if we weighed it or not, but it was a nice fish all the same, and it certainly put a smile on his face, and that's the goal at the end of it. So I didn't think that was going to be the end. We decided that, you know, it was still quite early and we didn't have to be off till 8 o'clock, so a couple of more hours sleep was necessary. So we done the photos, put the fish back and jumped straight back into bed. And around 45 minutes later, maybe an hour tops, my left-hand rod went into meltdown. Off the reed bed, which I knew it was going to happen, and that rod screamed off. Right, so a little change of tactics last night. We had a little late night move. after sort of plotting up mid-water, halfway up the lake. We saw a few fish show up the top end by the reeds, and we decided to move. The two guys moved out about 7 o'clock, end of the day, and we moved up probably about 9:30. Paddy obviously had one this morning, which you saw a little bit earlier. Decided to get a couple more hours before heading off this morning, a couple more hours sleep, and I was rudely awoken by this little beauty. Excuse me while I talk a bit louder because the plane's going over my head. But there we have it, saves a blank. Maybe we'll get one more before we go, but if not, happy days. Everyone's had a carp. Lovely, lovely job. Winning! Again, we didn't weigh the fish. Nice little scaly thing, and a nice way to end the trip. So with Paddy finishing up on 2, obviously had one in the morning. It was a fairly successful session, especially with the fact that we couldn't walk round and we didn't get the lake choice that we wanted. Looking forward to doing a few more of these sort of tutorials later in the year. And yeah, stay tuned. If you want to get involved, then check out the website. Obviously, keep on top of the social media channels, the Brothercarp channel on Facebook and Instagram. And I'll catch you on the next one.